Hello everyone, and welcome back to Nintendo Everything Refresh, the official podcast of NintendoEverything.com, where we keep you up to speed with everything new and exciting in the world of Nintendo. And I'm very pleased to announce that we have the whole squad here today for the first time in a while. So for those of you who are just tuning in, we have got Dennis Gagliardato.
Hello, everyone. I've actually just popped some champagne because everyone's back, so I'm excited.
Ooh, turn it up on a Sunday night.
Special moment.
Yeah,
usually when
very
we record.
special. Yeah.
Yes. We've also got Luiz Estrella.
Hey everyone, super happy to be back here. I'm excited to talk about all the stuff that happened this past week.
Yes, quite a bit to talk about. And we've also got Nicolas today.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here.
Yes. And this is episode 21 of the podcast, which means we are now, the show is now officially old enough to drink here in the United States, at least. So
That's why I brought out the champagne. Exactly.
that's why Dennis brought the champagne.
That's right. See, it's multi-layered. So a lot to celebrate
Yes.
It takes
We
a
do have a
while
lot to
in the
celebrate.
US. I didn't know that. In Brazil, it's 18.
Yeah, it's the U.S.
okay.
is very slow when it comes to that. But honestly, like even when people are 50, they're still pretty immature. So I understand it.
Yeah.
Yes. In America, you can join the military before you can legally drink. So
Correct.
Correct. Some context for you.
Yeah.
But no, speaking of celebrations, we do have a lot to celebrate. The biggest thing being there was a Splatoon 3 Direct this past week, which was half an hour just jam-packed with a ton of information. And then there was even more information about the game revealed on the Splatoon 3 blog. So there's a lot we could talk about. I'm sure we won't get to everything. But we're going to start with that. And then after that, we've got even more. So THQ Nordic, they had their own kind of direct this week, and they talked about a couple Switch games. We'll talk about that. A bunch of games got delayed out of the end of this year. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And then, we just got some smaller stories towards the back end of the show. But let's start with the big thing, the Splatoon 3 Direct. So like I mentioned, it was about half an hour long, and this thing was packed, man. Like there were so many tidbits and details, just way more than we can get into. But like overall, Nicolas, I want to get just like, what do you think? What did you think of the presentation as a whole? Are you feeling like Splatoon 3 is bringing enough new to the table? Because I think that was one of the things we talked about back when we talked about this game earlier this year.
Yeah, so personally, I'm very happy with it. I think it's bringing enough in terms of quality of life improvements, in terms of just little smaller things that's changing up, new weapons, like the new story and whatnot. And to me, it's pretty much what I expected from a Splatoon 3. Just like Splatoon 2 to Splatoon 1 was not, it was not a drastic overhaul, not a complete change of everything. It modified a few things, modified the setting, added some new characters. And then as the game will continue its development, and, well, maybe not continue its development, but, as it gets all its post-launch support, it will end up being able to differentiate itself more from the past game, which is, what Splatoon 2 did from 1. And in that regard, I think this is a perfectly fine sequel. And I'm really happy with what they showed off.
Yeah, so I think one of the big takeaways for me was that it seems like they're trying to add a lot of content to this game out of the gate. Between the story mode, which I think has just some of the bigger production values that we've seen in the series so far. The game is launching with 12 maps, which is still short of what was in Splatoon 2 over time, but still a good amount of content. And then the salmon run mode looks bigger, and they have more like boss battles and things like that. So it seems like people who are picking up this game on day one are going to have a lot of content to sink their teeth into, which I do remember hearing some people saying back when Splatoon 2 launched, they felt like that game was a little short on content, maybe specifically for people who are interested in single-player content.
Yeah, it's a little amusing how, honestly, a lot of the complaints surrounding Splatoon 3's release are the exact same complaints that were made surrounding Splatoon 2's, even down to the fact that people are calling it Splatoon 2.5, when people originally called Splatoon 2 Splatoon 1.5.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. Honestly,
It's the same approach, right? Nintendo is using the same approach.
Yeah. I do, yeah, I still feel like I sort of understand that people want like a huge overhaul. Like they want a lot of changes from the game, but I don't know, I feel like I vibe with this approach in a way where I understand them making these smaller adjustments, not changing the entire core of how the game is played. So I'm happy with this.
I think overall it's just a matter of the Splatoon formula. It still feels a lot fresh, at least for me. The Turf War battles, the ranked battles. I don't see Nintendo drastically changing, taking into consideration that we have Splatoon is a esport right now, so people are used to playing that way. I see this game specifically aimed, and seeing that direct, I see this game specifically aimed for people that already love Splatoon. Like those that really like the game, that are still playing the second game to this day, and they just want an update. It's something like that. And a lot of people say, oh, all of this could be a free update. But however, I'm of the opinion that a free update, usually games with free updates does not have the same quality of what we are getting here. Like you can argue that it looks very similar to Splatoon 2, but I think it's undeniable that the polish here is fantastic. It feels like they are bringing the Splatoon formula to perfection. A lot of small stuff, like simply the possibility to add the replays and to upload the replays, stuff like that, just make the game feel more Splatoon, but a better experience overall. So I understand what they are trying to do here, and for a lot of people who are Nintendo fans and want to see something completely different in each new entry, they are kind of upset, but I think they are really trying to appeal to people who are already Splatoon fans.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree with you, Luiz. But I do think, however, that I think in the future, Splatoon should adopt some sort of formula that is similar to. Well, so I'm thinking two different approaches, right? So either one, have a similar approach to what Overwatch and Destiny do, right? Where you can have the free updates over time, but let's just settle on one Splatoon from now on and just have that update over time, but not like the free updates like you were saying, but how Destiny does it, especially where there's these massive, almost changing the game every time, right? These huge $40 to $60 updates that are practically a whole new game again, but you can still play the original game that you had, right? So, and I always use Hitman as a good example, where Hitman 3 also came with Hitman 1 and 2 maps, right? So Hitman 3 was almost the definitive Hitman experience, because Hitman 3 really by itself only had about 6 new maps. So there wasn't much. Now, it was still a great story, but honestly, you could beat that story and go through all those maps, at least your first blind playthrough, maybe about 5 hours, right? So a lot of people would complain paying $60 for that, but having those previous 2 games already in there gives you a substantial amount of content, right? So you have all the Hitman 1 maps, all the Hitman 2 maps, and the contracts, and all of the create a map sort of things that they have. And I want them to sort of do that with Splatoon, I think, from now on, because, if we're going to spend $60 every 2 years for what is almost a half step versus a complete overhaul like we were talking about earlier, I think eventually that's going to build fatigue, and then you're going to find yourself in a 2K situation where it's like, it's like every sports game ever where it's like, okay, updated roster, great, and then Splatoon's going to be like, well, what's
Yeah.
new? Oh, it's a new hub, and it's a new map, and then that's it, so like that's going to disappoint people over time. And Splatoon is such a quality property, that is such a great property as well, that so many people love and have fun with, and you don't want to diminish something that has such potential and such value like that. But if you keep doing this, it will naturally lose its value over time. So yeah, that's just something that I feel they should consider in the future, where we can't keep doing these bi-yearly half-step upgrades, even though there's a lot of quality of life stuff, which is fantastic. But again, these are things that can happen through time over patches, right? These aren't things that, I just don't want to spend $60 for a better, group chat, so it's...
Yeah,
so, yeah.
I do agree with you. I do think the main draw, at least because I'll be honest, I don't play a ton of multiplayer games. It's generally not like my go-to genre. but I am always down for creative Nintendo single player stories. And there were some like story content in Splatoon 2 out of the gate, but really the big single player chunk of content came with the Octo expansion, which was a paid DLC.
Yeah.
And I think that cost what, like 30, maybe
That was
40?
20, I think.
I want to say
No,
it
that
was
was
20, but I'm not
25?
sure.
I think it was
Yeah,
Shiny.
well,
Right now it's free on the Nintendo Switch Online program.
Right. But yeah, so the fact that we're getting this whole campaign, I think that helps justify the cost a little bit. I think people would be a little more frustrated if it was just the quality of life content. But they are bringing in some new modes as well. The one that really stuck out to me was how, I don't remember what it was called off the top of my head, but it was like with 3 teams. So you have like a team of 4 in the middle of the map, and then you have 2 on each side kind of coming at them. And I'm like, that's interesting. Like that's something new that I think could really find an audience with people who are looking for something new to sink their teeth into in this game.
That looked awesome to me.
Although it is exclusive to Splatfest, so you won't be able to play it all the time, presumably, but it is a very interesting idea.
Yeah. Which, speaking of Splatfests, there is going to be an opportunity to play this game before it's out. So there's a Splatfest on August 27th that is just free for everyone to play. So if you have a Switch, you can actually pre-register for this free Splatfest now, and it will download to your Switch. And so that'll be a good chance to actually get hands-on with the game, which I'm really excited to do personally because I played a little bit of Splatoon 2 back when it first was coming out, but I never really got super into it. And I'm wondering if this is the release that will actually really hook me, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
I'm excited for it, but that's kind of like what happened with me with Splatoon 2, and I don't think that'll happen again this time, because it did look like there was enough there for me to enjoy it for quite some time. But Splatoon 1, I spent so much time with. It's one of my favorite Wii U games. I would definitely put it on probably top 5, Wii U games if I had to rank them. But and I spent hundreds of hours on it. But then when Splatoon 2 came out, man, I mean, I think overall, if I were to look back on my profile, I mean, I maybe barely touched 60 hours, so and even that, I don't even think that's right, maybe 50 hours. And it just didn't feel like there was enough there for me to get more invested into it all over again, because I kept getting this feeling of like, been there, done that. Right. And and I'm just, I don't think that'll happen again here for the most part, because it did seem like there was enough to play around with, especially with the whole lockers, and that seemed like it was fun, customizing lockers and whatnot.
Yeah, what was the deal with that? That's
I don't know, but it was cool.
Like random thing. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
sure, I'll customize
I like
a
those
locker,
additions,
why
yeah.
not?
Yeah. But yeah, small little things like that just give it a lot more personality, and I think that's what Splatoon 2 was missing for me, was that personality. Even though, yeah, sure, it's vibrant, it's cute, and Pearl and Marina were great, but it again, if you played Splatoon 1, and I get it, not many people did, there's almost 150 million Switches out there versus what, 17 million Wii U's, you know what I mean? So
Something like that, yeah.
So the audience obviously is much bigger on Switch, and there's a lot of people who played Splatoon for the first time with Splatoon 2, so I get that. So now you're experiencing and you're feeling what I felt with the first one on Wii U, an incredible game, right? So I'm curious if, a lot of people coming from Splatoon 2 might feel a little of that, I don't want to say disappointment, I don't want to say whiplash, but a little of that, I guess, you don't feel entirely fulfilled. Yeah, I guess, that too, but with Splatoon 3. So, but Splatoon 3, like I said, compared to Splatoon 2, at least has enough of an overhaul to it that I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it at the end of the day, for sure.
Yeah. And hey, here's one thing we can all breathe a deep sigh of relief about. The Nintendo Switch Online app is still alive and kicking, guys. They're going to Splatoon at 3.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, for what it's worth.
Last time we heard anything about that app?
I mean, for what it's worth, the Splatnet app on it was basically always the only reason to use the app, because it's really good.
It's what the feel good thing.
App. That's basically what it is at this point.
Yeah.
I only ever used it for Animal Crossing, but I literally haven't touched it in 2 years.
So I wonder if anyone used that too for voice chat, because it simply doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. There are a few other things I would like to mention about
Please.
Splatoon 3, mostly what was shown in the blog post, because there was a lot of information there that's like kind of more general quality of life stuff that they didn't really mention. One of those is that cloud saves are sort of in the game, whereas they were completely absent in 2. In this game, they're going to be available only for the single-player content, but for the multiplayer, what's happening instead is that all of your online content is going to be tied to your Nintendo account, is going to be saved on a server Nintendo side, so you will always be able to access it just by getting to your account. You just can't like manipulate it like a cloud save, like you would be able to with a cloud save, so you wouldn't be able to like roll back a version, essentially. So they can still prevent cheating, but all your data is stored.
I mean, hey, that's the most modern solution we've seen from them for something like this in a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else
appreciated.
has anyone else ever had to deal with the headache that is transferring an Animal Crossing island between Switches? Oh my god.
I've not done that.
Wow.
Don't. If you can avoid it, I had to I had to first bring over, like when I was moving from my Switch to my Switch OLED, I had to bring over every profile individually one by one, because you can't bring over all the profiles on your Switch at once. You have to bring them over one by one.
That would be
And then
man.
at that point, then I could transfer over the Animal Crossing island, but it was ridiculous.
Yikes.
So yeah, I love seeing a modern solution from Nintendo for cloud
Finally,
saves. That's
yeah.
amazing.
Other things are the ranked modes, and just general matchmaking is much better in terms of matching up with friends. So that was kind of an issue in Splatoon 2, is that for Turf Wars and ranked battles, there wasn't really a way to play with friends easily. You could sort of do it in Turf Wars, but even then you couldn't be guaranteed to be on the same team. That's different for this game, where for both ranked and Turf Wars, you have the ability to play with anywhere from 1 to 3 of your friends on the same team. And it just works, apparently. So
Finally,
that's a
yeah.
huge change that I think a lot of people are going to be happy about.
Yeah, no, it's again that's another example of them, like those quality of life improvements, which on their own don't sound like a lot, but for people who play these games all the time, that's a huge deal.
Yeah, something that I wanted to point out that to me, because recently we had a conversation about announcing DLC when the game did not come out yet with Xenoblade 3. And here they announced that the game will have a large paid DLC, right? And I think in this particular case, I have kind of a problem, because after Octo Expansion, I kinda had high hopes for the single player of this game, because I felt that Octo Expansion was a huge step forwards, and they could do something even more interesting in a full new game. But looking from the footage, it was a very short segment in the direct, but looking from the footage for the single player experience, it felt really similar to the one in Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2. Like the level design and the overall style, those levels and stuff like that. And I get the impression that the actual cool single player experience will be in that paid DLC again, because if they are already planning it, it feels as if they are saving some stuff for that. So yeah, I'm kind of mixed on that, because I'm excited because it's paid DLC. I want to see what they're going to produce, but because the single player did not give me a very positive impression on that direct, I was kind of mixed up on that.
Yeah, I think that's a fair impression. It's certainly, I hope the single player will take some cues from Octo Expansion in terms of how they designed the levels and whatnot, and that it's not necessarily as basic as the other campaigns, because although, what was it called? Octo Valley and Octo Canyon, I think were the names, are fun. Octo Expansion was a much more thorough single player, and I would say it had better designed levels because of the fact they could theme them around specific weapons. So yeah, I mean, like you said, I hope they didn't just kind of gut that design philosophy just so that they could stick it exclusively in DLC.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, they put out this amazing expansion with the Octo expansion, and so I can't imagine them. They've been promoting the single player content a lot. So if it came out and it was super half baked, I mean, there were 80 levels in the Octo expansion. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if we can expect that exact same structure for the single player, but I can't imagine them like. I mean, they basically turned the game into like a puzzle platformer for that, and so I can't imagine them doing anything like drastically different for the single player campaign. But I mean, who knows? Like this big paid expansion, it could be, more multiplayer content. It could be new modes or something. I mean, we just
they
don't
did
know.
not specify.
So,
yeah, true.
So I guess time will tell. But yeah, I don't know. Anyone have any other closing thoughts about Splatoon 3? Is this going to be a day one game for anyone?
Who are you repping, and why is it Big Man?
That's a good point.
Big Man was all over Twitter this week.
Oh yeah, he's a great.
I mean,
I like the addition of a third member to the musical group.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah, you can actually skip the news segment apparently, which is another huge thing.
That's big. That's big.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're like, screw all these new characters they're designing, I just want to go spray some ink everywhere. There you go. Big Man will be very disappointed in you if you skip their broadcast, though. And you don't want to disappoint Big Man. Yeah, that's not good. All right. Well, yeah, Splatoon 3, that's probably all the big... I mean, we might still get some little bits of news here and there, but, I mean, really, that game is just a few weeks away at this point. September 9th. So... So yeah, when that game comes out, we will probably have a lot more to say about it. In the meantime, we did get some third-party news this week. So THQ Nordic, which that's a whole story in itself. Remember like THQ and then how they were gone and now they're back and they're owned by a different company now. It's crazy. Anyways, THQ Nordic has been like really like putting out games lately, and they had their own kind of direct recently. And most of it was third-party stuff that is not coming to Switch as far as we know. But there are a couple third-party games they showed off. So one of them is it's a new wrestling game called AEW Fight Forever. It's very dramatic. AEW is like it's a wrestling league. It's not on the same level of like a WWE or whatever, but it's like fairly like. I'd say like wrestling fans probably have heard of it. We haven't really gotten a good like big budget wrestling game on the Switch. Like I remember hearing about the last like WWE 2K18 came out. That game was just a mess. So
I maintain that game, and there's another one too, but I maintain that WWE 2K18 should have been recalled. That's one of the few games on Switch that absolutely should have been recalled. They should have stopped being sold like shortly after that game came out because of how much of a mess it is, how unplayable it is, and it is
it's
just
offensive.
No, it's not. This game was basically a paperweight that had Seth Rollins on it. That's all. That's the only. That's the only thing that game.
Don't mince words here, Dennis. Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah. No, see, well, here's the thing. I'll tell you more, but that's paid DLC. It'll come in the future. But,
there you go. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. But that game and Troll and I, both of those should have been recalled off store shelves. And the fact that I still see it from time to time on store shelves, and the fact that it's still sold on the eShop is ridiculous. They should be sued and just.
Wow.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It's anti-consumer, man. It's anti-consumer. There's got to be breaking laws.
And I thought Switch was bad.
May I interest you in this other game called AEW Fight Forever? Might be your alley.
It might be, but unfortunately, the footage that's out right now is strictly next-gen footage. So we'll see, what it looks like when it comes out on Switch. With where I just don't. I'm surprised, honestly, that's coming out on Switch. Quite frankly, but we'll see.
It really does. It's always seemed like a missed opportunity to me because the Switch, like you've got these sports games, and I understand a lot of people play them for the visuals and getting the best graphical experience possible. But some of these games are just like they're the type of games that you could very easily pick up and play if they were on the Switch. And other than we finally got. An MLB The Show game on the Switch this year. There really are not a lot of these big budget sports games on the Switch, and we're still getting the FIFA games, the FIFA Legacy editions every year. But
that's
I'm
ridiculous. Yeah. Those Legacy games. I love FIFA, but I don't have on Switch because, yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about the roster updates earlier. That's exactly what those FIFA games have been on Switch ever since the system came out. So yeah, and I like fighting games. I'm not a huge wrestling fan personally, but I feel like people who enjoy fighting games will probably enjoy wrestling games to an extent. A lot of similar mechanics, just with a little bit of like real life corniness and But yeah, so that was one of the games that was shown off, and then the other game, which might be more of interest to our Nintendo-centric audience here, is a new SpongeBob SquarePants 3D platformer called SpongeBob SquarePants: The Cosmic Shake, which I gotta admit, guys, I grew up with SpongeBob, and I'm at least a little curious about this new game.
I'm not sure if you guys watched the trailer. I think Nintendo posted the trailer, and I just clicked, like, not expecting a lot, but I was super surprised with this game, because from the trailer it looks like a very solid platformer, like so many mechanics, variety, and even the setting. I think it feels super creative, super interesting, with those characters, of course, that we already know for years, but bringing them to some very interesting places, and with all those amazing characters. I'm really interested in seeing what they bring with the game. And we know that they made the remake that also came to Switch, and I think which was
very well received.
Yeah, it was well received. And seeing they trying something new after that, it feels very. I really like that. It feels like maybe they are trying to bring back that platforming style that was really during the GameCube era, that we saw a lot of games trying that, but nowadays it's not super rare anymore, because a lot of indies are trying that, but it's not always that these games work. And from the trailer, it looks very nice.
It seems like they're going for like a greatest hits of SpongeBob vibe, which honestly I'm there for.
Yeah.
Like I was reading the description, like the PR that they put out, and one of the bullet points was enjoy the in-game soundtrack featuring 101 songs from the series, which I'm like, holy crap, there are 101 songs from SpongeBob, and then they say including Sweet Victory, which if you're a SpongeBob fan, you know that song.
Yeah, you know that one, and you know that whole episode.
They know who they're trying to reach with this game, and it's probably gonna work. Yeah, the only thing that I'm like isn't quite gelling with me is the art style, because it just looks so different from the old episodes of the show. I don't really know how to describe it. Dennis, did you grow up on SpongeBob like all of us other cultured young millennials?
I did actually, but that was definitely more my brother's show, because even though I watched a lot of it, and I did watch a lot of it, it was never like, if you ask me to kind of recall some some of the late 90s, early 2000s cartoon shows that we grew up on that I remember fondly, actually SpongeBob wouldn't be on that list, believe it or not. I was always more on the Cartoon Network side of things too, rather than Nickelodeon. So that's kind of where my heart went. It was Cartoon Network rather than Nickelodeon.
You know what? That's fair. My parents, they saw too many rowdy things on Cartoon Network, so
fair enough. Yeah,
we were lucky we got away with SpongeBob at the time. This is a total side note, but when I was a kid, so I had a Game Boy Advance, and there was a SpongeBob game on there. I think it was like the Game Boy version of Battle for Bikini Bottom, and when I got that game as a kid, I was like picturing, I'd only ever seen like the GameCube version. I was like, oh, of course, this Game Boy game is going to be exactly the same as the GameCube version of the game. So you can imagine how disappointed I was when I booted it up. It was like budget 2D side scroller.
I've been there so many times, you guys. You have no idea. That's happened to me with Power Rangers games. That's happened to me with Batman games. Getting like a Game Boy version and being like, what is this? This isn't what I played on the GameCube or PS2 or PS1.
You just have no concept of that.
Right.
Ooh, this is a funny thing, because it used to happen a lot in the past. I had the same issue with the Harry Potter games. I bought the Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets for PC, and at the time I saw some images of the game running on GameCube, and it's a totally different game. It's totally different developers. There's a version for the PS1, there's a version for the PS2, there's a version for the PC, and Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color. There's like 5 versions of each Harry Potter game. So it's curious. In the past, many developers, many publishers did that to hire different developers, because like there's these developers who know how to develop for PC, and this one for Game Boy Advance, and that and there and that. And it's very interesting. It's cool because we had different approaches of the same experience. So I kind of miss that in a certain way.
Actually. It's just so funny. Like, you know, I'm just sound like such an old person here, but like it's just one of those things that like kids today are just not gonna have to deal with. You know? You can get pretty much the same game on all your platforms. You just the Switch version probably just looks a little bit worse. But we've all accepted that, you know. All right. Well, yeah. So that was pretty much it from the THQ Direct. Not coming to Switch yet, but I was also super excited. They announced a new Alone in the Dark game. Which I know is not like the most popular horror series out there, but those games have always had like just the right amount of cheese, you know? And so I think it'll bring back like that old school Resident Evil hokiness that I've been missing in my life lately.
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, it's not too much a surprise it wasn't a household name given the last few games in comparison to the first few.
Yes. Yeah, it's been a while. But anyways, that's not coming to Switch, so who cares? We don't talk about those games on this podcast.
They don't exist.
No, they don't exist. Let's talk about some games that also don't exist, or at least won't exist as quickly as we assumed. In other words, I'm trying to say a lot of games got delayed. So, like, seriously, all at once. I mean, this has been kind of the year of delays, you know, where the schedule was packed earlier this year, like back in January. We're like, oh, there's so many games coming this year. And then kind of as the year went on, a lot of game studios have just been kind of feeling the I don't know what the right word is. They've been feeling the effects of COVID in a lot of cases.
Like the aftermath, sort of.
Pushing, yeah. So some games have gotten pushed back. The big one, the one that I was actually really disappointed in this week was the new Harry Potter game coming out, Hogwarts Legacy. As amazed as I am that that game is coming to Switch, it was supposed to come out this holiday season, and it got pushed back on most platforms to February of next year. But the Switch version just doesn't have a date yet. They're like, we'll announce a version for the Switch version at a later point, which is never a great sign.
No, never.
It happened with some games that actually came out and were pretty good, like Doom Eternal, if I'm not mistaken. So sometimes it can mean something good. With this one in particular, it was so out of place when they announced that there was actually a Switch version, that to me gives the impression that when they announced it was the time that they actually got their hands into the developments of the game, and then they started to develop it, and then they got like, oh no, this will not run the way. This is not run the way that we expected it to run. So
like, sorry guys, we confused this for the Steam Deck.
Oh, that's the Switch.
Right. Oh, that Switch? Oh no. Okay. Oh no.
Well, or also, you know, like they were developing this game for next gen consoles, and then someone from Warner Brothers comes knocking on the door and is like, oh hey, yeah, we actually need this on all the consoles.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
We need to sell at least 100 million units on every system. So
otherwise, it performs below expectations.
Yes, and then we will sell it off and invest in blockchain technology. So yeah, that was the big delay. And then some other smaller games that got delayed. River City Girls 2, which is those games are, you know, if you're a fan of those types of beat 'em ups, you probably know that franchise. Those are good games. That one is now just coming a little bit later this summer, so not a huge delay. And then Metal Slug Tactics, that was announced, I think, back in an Indie World presentation, or it was a direct of some sort. And that one was going to come out towards the end of this year, and that's been pushed to 2023. So.
Yeah. I mean, the other interesting thing for River City Girls is that it has a release date in Japan. They gave it a December 1st release date there. But for everywhere else, it's just like, hey, this is coming sometime later.
Interesting. I guess
why.
Maybe those games are developed for a Japan first audience, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's issues with the localization.
Yeah.
Another thing that was delayed was also Marvel's Midnight Suns.
Right.
That was a bit. It's funny because that one's already suffered a delay, so that's that studio is definitely feeling some setbacks.
Something.
And that one doesn't have a new window yet. That one was just later this fiscal year, which means probably before March next year. But
Yeah, and similar to Hogwarts Legacy, it was also, hey, it's releasing on all the other systems first, and then Switch and I think PS4 and Xbox One sometime after those other versions.
Oh, okay.
So,
hey, I think this is actually official confirmation that they delayed all these games because Nintendo's obviously going to release the Switch Pro next year.
Oh,
So they had to wait.
for sure.
Obviously, yeah, that's the reason.
About the delays, something, just a general discussions that I want to know what you guys think about it. Delays are quite frequent on the video game industry, and in comparison to like the movie industry, is way more frequent. Do you guys think this is related to the nature of developing games because it's a more complex or something a little harder to plan, or this is just a sign of an industry that is not as mature as the movie industry? Because we see like Marvel announcing the release dates of movies that didn't even begin to film. So like it shows how much planning there goes in that. So do you guys think that eventually there's a point that in the video game industry stuff like that will stop to happen, or that's just the nature of the video game industry?
I don't know. That's a hard question. I mean, I don't want to say that like movies are easier to make than video games, because I don't necessarily think that that's true. But you're comparing ultimately a movie is something you could sit down and watch in 3 hours, whereas some of these games are, designed to be these massive 50, 60 plus hour long experiences that also have to be replayable, and, they have to be designed to, accommodate for different play styles. And so I think, there is just a lot of complexity that comes with video games that is just unlike any other medium. And I do think, the industry is getting to a point where overall, the focus is being on, we want to create games that are just more and more impressive, more and more visually impressive, and the more that becomes a focus, it's just things are gonna take longer than expected. I know a lot of game developers right now, they were working on projects that were in Unreal Engine 4. Well, now Unreal Engine 5 is out, and so a lot of them are saying, okay, we're going to delay our game to port it over to this new engine so it looks better. So I think there's a lot of factors, but I think that's my main take.
There's definitely a lot of, I want to call it disruption. So I'm going to use the word disruption because you basically took the words out of my mouth, Nick, where, we did have recently the release of Unreal Engine 5, right? So you have people that or developers now that are, they're transitioning now from Unreal Engine 4 to Unreal Engine 5 because they want to take advantage of that power and utilize, whatever, potential, perks that come with that. So, because I think at the end of the day, everyone's trying to make the best game they can possibly make, right? I don't think anyone's intentionally going out trying to make a bad game unless it's like, but ironically I say this, but something like when Goat Simulator originally came out, I think those guys intentionally tried to make a bad game, but it became so popular that it became
failed.
a great game. Right?
The joke became too real.
So, exactly. But yeah, so you do have the whole Unreal Engine scenario, and then you have everything happening now with the just a lot more workplace issues that people are trying to resolve, and
there's been a lot of restructuring, a lot of
exactly.
trying to make changes to how games are made.
And I do think thing. Yeah, for sure. And, COVID definitely plays a part, but then there's also massive games that come out where you don't want to compete with them. A perfect example of that is Forspoken, which got delayed because it was initially going to come out, if not the same day, I think within a week of God of War, So Forspoken, Square Enix literally came out and said, no, we're delaying this they said quote unquote strategic reasons, but behind the scenes, it was let out that, they didn't want to compete with God of War. So, I think you do have that movement and shifting of dates also because there's just too many big things that are coming out that you just don't want to compete with. And you mentioned earlier Harry Potter, and I know as someone who's like hugely excited for that game, I'm actually glad it got delayed, and I'll tell you why. Because the rest of that end of year, that whole seasonal period, that to me, again, I can't speak for everybody, but for me, that's going to be dedicated to Pokemon, right? And I just can't. I know I want to get lost in that world of Hogwarts Legacy.
Fair
so,
enough.
yeah. But yeah, it can be any number of things. I think with movies, you do have a more clear-cut schedule where it's like, all right, first things first, we write a script, right? And then after that, let's do screenplay, and then casting,
Right.
and let's
Filming is going to
move
take
on.
4 months. Editing is going to take 3 months.
Right, exactly.
Whatever.
It's
Yeah.
an older media, so people know more how to develop that.
Right, exactly.
Yes. Hey, one game that hasn't been delayed yet is Sonic Frontiers, though. They are reiterating that they will not delay that game.
It's funny.
Sega's
Hell or
like
high water. It is coming out.
Insistent.
It's coming in hot.
Guys, we swear the game is ready. We swear.
Oh man, yeah, that'll be an adventure for sure.
I think most people wish it was Sonic Adventure, honestly, but that's another discussion.
myself included.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I really did have fun when I played that game, and I'm actually very excited to play more of it. I feel like it has to be good. It just gotta be good. So they need a win.
Gambler's fallacy.
I had
I
this
know,
feeling
I
with
know.
Sonic before, and it didn't work. But I'm with you.
Okay.
I'm
trying to
excited for
manifest,
Frontiers.
you know?
I'm excited.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see. I do have a quick. We've talked a lot about a lot of things already, but there's a couple quick things I want to squeeze in before we start wrapping things up here. First thing, we had a surprise new Kirby game announced a couple weeks ago. It's Kirby's Dream Buffet. If you don't remember, it's the game where Kirby just eats a lot of food and gets enormously large. So really, like every other Kirby game.
Say which one?
It's Kirby. It's Kirby. Yeah.
No, it's like the Fall Guys game. Fall Guys plus Kirby. Looks great. Coming out August 17th. So that is like 3 days from the time we were recording this podcast.
It's probably going to be out by the
probably
time
be
this
out.
podcast is posted.
Yep. Looks great. I'm excited to play it for sure. And they also announced, I don't know, it was right around the same time, that there's going to be a Kirby 30th Anniversary Music Fest.
Yeah, that happened. Sorry.
Oh, it already happened.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, that actually happened on my birthday. It was a great way to start my birthday. I watched that.
Oh, happy belated birthday, Dennis.
Yeah,
Yes,
happy
thank
belated birthday. That's awesome.
Thank you guys.
Did they play the Meta Knight song? Because it's really the only song that I care about.
they played all the famous stuff.
Right.
I mean, it's
Love
hard
to
to keep
hear it.
track of it all, but yeah, all the classics that you know and love. Yeah, they played.
I've always wanted to go to one of those live video game like orchestra concerts, but I've just never brought myself to do it. I don't know. I wonder what it. Has anyone ever actually done that? And if not, what would be the game that would get you to actually go and buy tickets to see a physical video game concert?
I've done it twice with 2 Zelda concerts, so I mean, there's your answer.
Oh, okay. Yeah. that's
Otherwise, probably a Xenoblade one.
Oh, I was going to say that. But one of my dreams was to go to the Zelda concerts, and I think 2016 they announced a date in Brazil, in São Paulo, and I was like, oh my god, I have to go to this. And then like a month later, they canceled. I was so sad.
Oh wow.
They canceled in Brazil, but I almost got to see. I love orchestra. It's one of my dreams to see a live show of video game music.
That would be cool. That would be really cool. I would love to go to a Final Fantasy orchestra show. I know they do those. I never have gone to one. And next time they do it, I think I'm gonna do it. But
Yeah, that's like me with Pokemon. Like they do those, but I've never been to one myself. But I would love to go to a Pokemon orchestration. I'm a little hungry, guys. So just thinking about all the
your new
beef
starter
and pork.
Pokemon, you've got the Baconator. You've got
That's right, the Baconator, and then later this holiday season, everyone's new favorite, Lechonk.
There you go.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Pokemon would be a big big one. And I would probably say, honestly, anything Square Enix, including Final Fantasy, like you mentioned. Like Square Enix, I think, has some of the best compositions because they work so much with people like Yoko Shimomura, who's just a brilliant composer. But my favorite composer of all time is Akira Yamaoka, who's responsible for Silent Hill. So if I could go to a Silent Hill orchestra, oh my lord, that'd be a dream come true.
That would be like such a depressing orchestra concert to go to, but I'm sure it'd be really good.
But they're happy tears, I promise you. They're happy tears.
There you go. Hey, all right, here's something totally just random. And I know everyone here, we all play Super Punch-Out every single week, right? We all have our SNESs always plugged into the TV. Mm-hmm. We're always playing Super Punch-Out. And yet, somehow, none of us have discovered that apparently there was a hidden multiplayer mode tucked away in this game for the last 30 something years. Who would have thought?
Yeah, I love stuff like this. This is always just so much fun. You have to wonder how this was never found. Did no one ever data mine this and find this functionality? It's super interesting.
Not even Nintendo must have known.
It just showed up one day.
Only the programmer who did that.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Because, when did that game come out? It was 1993, 1994? That's a long time.
I think it was 27 years ago or something? 1994. Yeah, that's 28.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's something that you could actually go and replicate in, is Super Punch-Out, is that on Switch Online?
Yes, and apparently you can actually.
Replicate it.
Oh.
Wow. Okay. Well, there's your homework, everyone. Go play some multiplayer Punch-Out.
Get a friend, sit
down.
Does
it work fine?
I haven't tried it myself, but I've seen people test it on the SNES Online app, and apparently it does work, as expected, I guess. So,
wow.
It's actually impressive.
Which, considering no one knew it existed, I mean, expectations were already low, so...
it's funny that they just, I guess it makes sense because they just transferred the entire game across different versions, but it's funny that this mode is in even just the latest versions of the game.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's cool. That's one of the reasons why I would like for a developer for example, Shigeru Miyamoto to write a book or to do a super interview, because I imagine so many stuff that he must have known and we have no ideas of scrapped projects or stuff that is inside the game but we can't access normally. It's just so many secrets from that era.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, one more quick news thing I want to touch on. So last week we talked a little bit. Nintendo had their big financial report and investor meeting, and one of the things they talked about was how they were planning to up Switch production this year, which should make it easier to buy a Switch in the short term. And I was like, oh, it's the end of the Switch shortage. That's great news. But then they came out this year, just this past weekend, they were like, oh, well, we actually don't know what it's going to look like next year. So there could be, it could just be a temporary burst. But they did say that regardless, they're not going to be raising the price of the Switch, which you'd hope is a no-brainer. But I don't know if you guys...
I mean, why would you raise price on 7-year-old hardware at this point?
Yeah.
Isn't the tradition to go lower rather than higher?
Okay, so you joke about that, but I don't know if you saw, but the MetaQuest 2 headset, that was
I did
priced
see that,
really low for a long time, and they actually raised the price by $100 just recently.
Wow. That's reverse marketing.
Yikes.
They were calling it a reverse sale. Yeah.
I mean, for what it's worth, that question about the price increase, I believe, was asked by an interviewer. So the president didn't just go, by the way, in our infinite generosity, we've decided not to increase the price of the system.
I think he asked the question because the cost had to go high because they are searching for different distributors and stuff like that. But maybe that's one of the reasons why the price did not go low. Because 5 years, I think we should expect the price to go low by this point, right?
Yeah.
But apparently...
Well, and the chip shortage,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of factors at play. Well, chances are good that if you're listening to the show, you already have one Switch. But, maybe that's not enough for you. I don't know. If you want more, better go pick them up now, I guess. All right, well, that's all the news we have to talk about. But before we wrap things up for episode 21 here, let's kind of go around the circle and talk about what we have been playing lately. Luiz, let's start with you since you weren't here last week. I assume that means you had a lot of time to play video games, of course.
Play
So,
one
so what have you
specific video game.
Yeah, Nick, you know that I've only played.
Yeah. I don't blame you.
Yeah, I mean,
Blame you.
Nick already just done with it.
did you guys talked about
All right,
the?
we could just skip Louise, I guess. All right.
Did you guys talked about the Mario Kart DLC in the last episode?
We did a little
okay.
bit.
Yeah, I expect that. But yeah, I think I did play that, and of course Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which there's not much that I can add to what I already said. It's a very nice game, and each chapter it goes harder and harder. Nicolas already passed me, so he knows even more things than I, and he says to me like,
right.
it goes completely insane. This is the best Xenoblade game ever, and oh my god, I have to play more. I'm playing.
I'm surprised you took a break. I'm surprised you took a break long enough to check out the Mario Kart DLC. That's impressive.
I did not want to take a break, but I had to because I had to do stuff from work and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's a game. It's really hard to stop playing it because I say like, oh, I'll play for an hour or two, and like in 2 hours I only did side quests, and I want to advance the story, so I had to keep playing.
The struggle is real.
Yeah, it's a game that really grabs you.
Man, I really wish I had played like the earlier Xenoblade games, like because I really want to like be involved in all these conversations around this game. Like it sounds so good, and I'm like, oh, I really feel like I'm missing out. So I don't know. I might make Xenoblade 1 my next big game that I tackle.
Yeah, that's
We'll
a good
see.
decision.
Do it.
Okay, all right. It's on the record. What about you, Nicholas? Same thing, same deal.
Yeah, pretty much. I was really tempted to play more of Monster Hunter because the first title update for the game just released this week, and they added a ton of new content to that. But, you know, the Xenoblade, it has its hooks in me. I can't get away.
There's probably some monster hunting in that game, right?
There's a lot, actually.
What?
There's a lot. There's
what I
more
figured.
emphasis on that than I would have expected.
Interesting.
But
All right.
yeah, I mean,
Well,
you know,
take notes,
like Luis
Capcom.
said, it's great. It's a great game.
All right.
It's now basically gotten to the top of my list as my favorite Xenoblade game, which I wasn't sure if it would.
Oh boy.
But yeah, some of the story stuff that I just experienced was just like mind blowing. So, and it's not even the end of the game. So, I just want to play more. I just want to play more. Let's finish this podcast so I can go play more, please.
All right, deal. Yeah, again, I'm not going to start Xenoblade 1 right now because then there will be 3 people talking about Xenoblade every episode, and we just can't have that. So once you guys are done with 3, then I'll consider starting up.
Yeah,
1,
that's a
so
good
like,
reason. That's a good reason.
Then I'll be the one you guys can be mad at every week for not playing anything else. Dennis, what about you? What have you been taking on lately? Saw you had some reviews come out for the site recently.
Yeah. So, I'll actually mention one of them really quick. There were a few, but the big one would be Digimon Survive. So the review for that one is actually, if it's not up at the time of this podcast, or at the time that we're recording this podcast, it should be up by the time this podcast goes live.
It is.
Oh, it is? Okay, perfect,
Yes.
because I didn't have a chance to go and check.
Great review.
Thank you. But yeah, I'll just kind of do that one really quick because I have been playing another main one that I want to talk about. But yeah, Digimon Survive, we waited 4 years for it. It was a very long 4 years, especially if you're a Digimon fan like myself. And, we were worried if it was going to be canceled or whatnot, but thankfully the game came out. And I think because of those constant delays, and I started lowering my expectations and my hype for it, it actually exceeded all those expectations. So I've been having a fantastic time with it. And but do be warned that, they kind of market it as a strategy RPG, but basically everything that you've been hearing about this game being mostly a visual novel is true. And so keep that in mind if you are looking into getting into this. Don't expect something like Digimon Stories Cyber Sleuth, which are incredible games in their own right. But this one's definitely along the lines of Utawada Rumono, which we've talked about on the podcast before. And those are fantastic
Say that
games
10
as
times
well.
fast, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It wouldn't just be a tongue twister. I would bite my tongue. I know. It would just eventually it would hurt very much.
I saw some people disappointed because a lot of people talking not about the game, but because the game was not what they were expecting. The Digimon Survive. So
Yeah.
it's a fair warning.
Yeah, and that's exactly, and that's why I wanted to warn people as well, because again, it's the way they market it is like, oh, look at this new tactical RPG, but it's not that at all. I mean, it is, but it's very much leaned more towards the visual novel aspect of it. But again, if you're a fan of visual novels, but you're also a fan of strategy RPGs, then you're gonna love this game. It's got a wonderful story, beautiful illustrations, and yeah, it's just a fantastic game that you'll feel very comfortable with if you're a fan of one, if not both of those genres. But the main one that I've been playing over the last couple of days is I was feeling nostalgic, and because it's one of my favorite series of all time, I wanted to go and visit it, and that is Resident Evil 2, primarily the remake, Resident Evil 2 remake. So I've been playing that again, and I'm almost done with it for the I don't even know 100th time at this point. I've replayed that game so many times.
Wow.
But yeah, I'm a big Resident Evil fan, and Resident Evil 2, I was just kind of getting the itch of revisiting. And especially since they just released the next gen update that has the ray tracing, and at least if you own a Xbox Series X and S or a
Yeah.
PS5 and a PC as well. So they did that for Resident Evil 2 remake, Resident Evil 3 remake, and Resident Evil Village. So and maybe 7 as well. I can't remember if they did that for 7. Resident Evil
I think
7,
Village already had it, but I think
Oh, did it?
7
Okay.
got it added, I think. was
Okay.
What I had heard, but
Okay, so that's probably what
Yeah,
I
no,
was
that's cool.
thinking of. Yeah, it's but it's wonderful, it's beautiful, and yeah, still as great as it was a couple years ago. It's a fantastic game, and I can't wait for the Resident Evil 4 remake. I'm super stoked for that. Capcom, man, has been just incredible over these last couple of years. So they've really quickly. They've always been one of my favorite publishers, but within the last couple of years, they've become top 3 pretty easy. Yeah.
yeah, I speaking of Resident Evil, I haven't been playing it lately, but I got my Steam Deck not too long ago, and I was very excited to see that through Humble Bundle you could get the Resident Evil 1 remake for a
Oh, yeah.
whopping $1.
That's
I was
right.
like, oh, I gotta jump on that, man. That's gonna be great. I've never played the original Resident Evil, so I'm
Really?
excited to go check that out. No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's a good one, but it's definitely some people would consider it dated because it still does use those tank controls.
Right.
But I don't mind tank controls. I know a lot of people much prefer free roam 360 movement, but I really don't mind tank controls. I mean, probably because I grew up with it, but yeah, I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'll probably get to that eventually. But as far as what I've been playing lately, couple things. So the big game that I finished recently was Red Dead Redemption. I never played the first Red Dead Redemption, and I was kind of waiting because there were rumors that Rockstar was working on a remake that was coming to a bunch of platforms, including the Switch. I was like, oh well, I'll just wait for that to come out. But then there was a bunch of news, and they were like, oh no, that's not really happening anymore. And so I was like, I'm just gonna, give it a shot. And man, that game still holds up really well. Like, I played it on my Xbox Series X, the console that shall not be named on our Nintendo podcast. Excuse me. And it is just amazing, man. Like that game is running at 4K resolution. It's like 12-year-old game running at 4K
Yeah.
resolution on my TV. Doesn't look nearly as old as it actually is, and it was
Yeah.
a real pleasure to play through.
The upscaling techniques that they do for backwards compatible software on that they've been doing since Xbox One X, and now that they've implemented in these new systems as well, have been fantastic. I mean, when they first released that entire update to do that, I was downloading so much of my legacy software just from that I had from 360 in my library, and I would literally just boot things up for like 5-10 minutes at a time, just be like, that looks incredible. All right, next game. That looks phenomenal. All right, look at the next game. It's crazy to see, and everything's being done internally too. These aren't, the developers aren't going back and touching it up. This is all done through, the hardware itself. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing. Just to see, I think one of my favorites is Sonic Unleashed and Sonic Generations running on 60
Yeah.
FPS. It's just so cool.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. That's one area where I would like to see a little bit more done from Nintendo. But I will say, like they did some cool things with like their versions of backwards compatibility back in the day. Like, it's such a specific example, but it was about a year ago on my Wii U. I had an itching for. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna buy, of all things, I'm gonna buy Metroid Prime Hunters, the DS game, and play it on my Wii U for some godforsaken reason. And I was expecting, I was expecting a horrible experience, and it was actually really good. Like, I was like, wow, they have like this like filtering technique, so it kind of smooths out like the DS pixels or makes it look much cleaner. So Nintendo,
nice.
like, I feel like there's more they could be doing in the Switch era, because they did some good stuff back in the Wii U days.
Yeah, if nothing else, hopefully we get GBA games on there sometime soon.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
The other game I played that I just want to talk about quickly, it's really cool. This one is on the Switch, and I would totally recommend it. It's called Dodgeball Academia. I don't know if you guys have heard of this game or
Oh,
not,
Brazilian developers. Yeah.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, it's a really great little game. So it is a dodgeball-themed RPG, and you play as this kid named Otto, and he's at this dodgeball academy, and there's this kind of like corny mystery story, but that's not really the main focus. The main thing you do is you go around this school, and you have like dodgeball battles with people, but it's not like traditional dodgeball. You have you have a couple different like playable characters that you can switch between while you're in a match, and they all have different like special abilities. Like, for example, some of them can like counter, like when a ball is thrown at them, you can counter and send it back at the other team, or some of them have like a charge shot. So it's like very like cartoony and played up, and it's really funny. Game's got a great sense of humor. I think it's a beautiful game to look at too. Like the art style kind of has Paper Mario vibes, at least to me.
It's very charming, the look, the animations and the expressions.
Yeah. And I'd say the RPG elements are pretty light, but it's got some level of like, oh, you can get different equipment, and different dodgeballs have different like abilities and things like that, and so it's pretty cool.
I think it's on Game Pass, right?
It is on Game Pass, yeah, because I have it downloaded on my Xbox, but I haven't really tried it. I booted it up for like 10 minutes, and I really enjoyed the beginning part of it, but unfortunately, I just didn't have enough time to invest into it, so I just... But I've been meaning to go back. I still have it installed. It looked definitely up my alley. It looks fantastic.
Yeah, it's a great game on the Switch, because I feel like it's good for those kind of pick up and play sessions, especially because I believe... I haven't tried it, but I believe there's some level of like multiplayer play with like the dodgeball components. I was trying to get my fiance into it. Hopefully someday she'll try it with me. But yeah, if anyone's looking for something kind of offbeat but kind of different, I would definitely recommend it. We've seen a lot of these sports themed RPGs lately, and I'm not a big sports guy, but I am liking these sports RPGs, I will say.
And dodgeball, it's a funny choice, right? Because it's not a classic style of sport, but it's super fun.
Kind of a funny story. In my junior high school, we were not allowed to have dodgeball because our school district said it was too violent.
Oh no!
But yes, but
American football though.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But our coaches really wanted us to play it anyways, so they called it throwing and catching skills.
Oh, fantastic.
That was how we played it. They'd be like, all right, today we're going to practice throwing and catching skills.
Yeah, he fooled the system. Fantastic.
Good on them.
Yeah, it's a nice little loophole there. Loophole academia.
There you go. And I didn't know this, but is this a thing in dodgeball? So, like, if you get someone out, this is the way it works in this game anyways, you hit someone with a dodgeball, and then apparently what they do is they go behind you, like they go off the court, but they're like kind of sitting behind your team, and if a ball gets past you, they can pick up the ball and throw it at you from behind. Yeah. Is that a real dodgeball thing?
Really? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess I just must be misremembering.
It just wasn't a throwing and catching thing, I guess.
Clearly not.
It's a different sport, yeah.
I guess so. Shows what I know. All right, folks. Well, that is our show. Thank you so much for tuning in to episode 21 of Nintendo Everything Refresh. we had the full squad here today, and hopefully we'll be able to keep that going. But regardless, we hope you keep tuning in because we've had a slowly growing audience, and we really appreciate everyone who has been giving us their support over the past 21 weeks. If you like the show, please spread the word, please comment, please share. It really does make a difference. Tell your friends. We are on all these streaming platforms. And if you're ever not sure, you can go check out anchor.fm. We have a page on there that kind of provides links to every platform that we're on. So not just Spotify and Audible and Google Podcasts, but some of the smaller sites as well, which is cool. I did see someone commented that our direct downloads were not working. I'm gonna try and find a solution for that because I know some folks do like that. Can't guarantee it'll be anytime soon, but gonna look into it at the very least. Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will be back at you all next week with everything new and exciting in the world of Nintendo.